Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. Today is August 25th, 2026. I recently came across a news broadcast of a official in New York who was arrested for driving her son through a drive-by shooting. And so she was a deputy police commissioner in Mount Vernon, deputy police commissioner for the position of wellness in Mount Vernon. And this is a very unfortunate situation. And the reason why I picked up on this is because I've been talking about the misconduct of police officers, in particular, black police officers. I've talked about how I was wrongfully arrested in my home. I was wrongfully charged. I've gone through a trial process. And the, it's ironic that the chief of police of the predominantly white county I was living in where this happened uh, was a black man. People have told me that the misconduct I've suffered went all the way to the chief of police, that it came from the top. This is something black Americans who have experience in this, those who mentored me, told me. And of course, from what was going on in the Navy, I've talked about how the Auditor General of the Navy was supposed to be my mentor. She's just been forced out due to her misconduct. And I've done videos talking about that, so I'm not going to dwell on that now. She's a black American woman, right? And it's ironic that, as I said, the chief of police of the predominantly white county I was living in, right, was a black man. And the person who filed an arrest warrant, perjured arrest warrant, fabricated. And while on trial, the person claimed he didn't take an oath because he acknowledged that what he wrote in the arrest warrant was a fabrication, right? And at trial, he claimed he didn't take an oath. So no arrest warrants shall issue without an oath in America. So he was lying in court. He lied in the document when he got the arrest warrant. Complete fabrication, right? Lying that I threatened to shoot my uncle Jide Wari. Jide Wari, first of all, is not my uncle. He said he'd never met this Jide Wari. He didn't know him. So he just wrote a fabrication, something fictitious. That police officer who wrote that arrest warrant is a Marine, right? And he was a Marine, right? And he said, once a Marine, always a Marine. At the time, I was working in the Department of the Navy. And he's a black man, right? So the only person ever to write an arrest warrant for me is a black man, right? And he was hiding the fact that the police, they really came to serve a fabricated and perjured emergency evaluation petition written by another black man, a Nigerian black man, right? Jide Warire, impersonating himself as my uncle, a man who had assaulted me 2 days before, on May 14, 2023. He was now misrepresenting himself as being my own victim, as being a victim, right? He was trespassing in my home. So a black man, and then he got a black woman, a black American judge, BBM Berry, who's an alum of Howard University, where he was a teacher. He's been a teacher for 40 years, right? So you see all those connections, right? So all these black people in these positions of authority, and they execute this fabricated emergency petition. They don't give me notice. I have no chance to dispute it. My family doesn't know. So I'm kidnapped, assaulted, and kidnapped under color of law for weeks, for months, right? And then to add insult to injury, I'm charged for it. And of course, Montgomery County, Maryland. I'm gonna do further discussions later on, but that's as far as I'm going to go with respect to pivoting, connecting this, the case of Jennifer Lackard. I think that's her name, the deputy police commissioner who unfortunately has been disgraced. And there are videos of her in handcuffs and arraigned in court. So she's a black American woman and she worked very hard. I think it's a very unfortunate situation. And I something I want to emphasize is, This history, of course, this country has a history of discrimination and subjugating of Black people. So as Black people start to rise, start to ascend in white spaces and positions of authority, Blacks should not. And I'm talking to Nigerian Americans, right, and new African migrants, especially Nigerian Americans who are here. You know, you have to understand that there's that extra scrutiny on you, right? And there are people who want to frame you because they think you're a foreigner taking their jobs. And there are people who are just xenophobes, right? In America, even though America has provided us with these tremendous opportunities, right? They've welcomed us, America welcomed us, providing us tremendous opportunities. But you can't control everybody. There's some people who are good and welcoming, and there's some though who are terrible and xenophobes and racists. You can't control that, but you can control your own actions and make sure that you don't give opportunity, uh, for them to, for you. You don't want to be ensnared in the numerous pits and traps they're setting for you. That's what basically is goes on in America. You have to be careful about that. Unfortunately, though, in the case of Jennifer Lackard in New York, the deputy police commissioner for wellness, who was just recently arrested, it wasn't a case of her being set up, right, or being framed because of her high position. And she was very successful. I mean, she has this pedigree, right? Ivy League graduate, by the way. She got her undergraduate from Michigan, University of Michigan, one of the best schools in America. And then her master's from Cornell University, an Ivy League, very rigorous Ivy League, right? So she's got the pedigree. Uh, but however, it wasn't anybody setting her up or looking for her downfall, as the case may be, which happens. She shot herself in the foot. Apparently, she drove her son. Um, uh, Helped aided in his getaway. She was driving him while he shot into a crowd. He shot into a crowd, and that's what she's been arrested for. And they said, the police department issued a statement that she's been terminated effectively, right? Not as a result of her conduct and performance or anything, but because of her outside conduct. She's a public figure, right? She's a public servant. Public servants, what you do outside your external conduct affects your job because it's taxpayer money, right? And so you have to have a good image, a good profile, right? So and now you're getting, now there are all sorts of rumors, right? Acrimony, recriminations, accusations about her not being qualified for the job. I actually read an article in Washington Post, sorry, in the Post, New York Post, not Washington Post, but New York Post, concerning her, saying they hired somebody who wasn't qualified, right? She's Ivy League, she's overqualified to be a cop. She has a master's degree from Cornell University. I don't even know anybody, right, who has an Ivy League degree who goes to be a cop, right? She has a master's from Cornell University, an Ivy League. She has an undergraduate degree from Michigan, right? Look, cops aren't rocket scientists in America, right? So you've got to, really, really be intellectually challenged to go and work as a cop, right? As far as I'm concerned, right? That's my opinion. And there's data to prove it. Cops say it, right? When I was in law school, there was a person who came to my criminal procedure course. He's a cop. He'd been a cop, a captain for over 30 years or whatever. And he said it. He said, look, the problem with the police force is that, and of course, there are numerous police departments, but, he was speaking with respect to his, I think it was DC police or something he represented. And he said that they have a minimal standard of hiring, right? Very minimal qualifications. Basically, you walk in, minimal qualifications. They don't have a rigorous standard, and they just take it. Whoever applies gets into the police force, right? There was a case, I once saw Forensic Files. There was a case of a woman who was wanted, and she was a criminal, right? She was on a most wanted list, and she walks into the police, department where she was actually wanted. The alerts for her apprehension were all over town, And she walks in and applies for a job, and she almost got it, right? Even though her photo was right there in the police department that she was a wanted criminal, right? So they basically, you walk in, they hire anybody, they hire people who are members, gang members, and things like that. And now there are all sorts of accusations against this poor woman, right? Definitely grave bad judgments that she exercised. And she had a good background. She was a leader in the church community, a Baptist church. And now her critics, her detractors are now claiming, and the detractors of the mayor who hired her, they're saying that, look, this was a case of cronyism, right? Cronyism, nepotism. Well, not nepotism. Is for relative, but cronyism. They're saying that the mayor gave a job to her sorority sister because both of them belong to the same sorority, even though they didn't attend the same school and they also attend the same church. So they're saying, well, that the pastor pulled some strings, that this was a case of favoritism and things like that. And it wasn't a competitive, the position she got, there wasn't a competitive bid for it. There was, it wasn't an open competition for it. And they basically just, the mayor just basically gave her sorority sister, her church member, a job. Um, Now her son, they made all sorts of accusations now, getting her family involved because when they're hiring you for a job, it should be based on your qualifications. Yes, if your family, if your associates pose a security risk, that's a factor. It's something that should be considered. They said she has an ex-con husband. Her husband's an ex-con, ex-convict or ex-con. I don't know if it's ex-convict or ex-con man. I don't know if they call him an ex-con man. He's got to have been convicted for it because that would be defamation. So I guess they mean ex-convict. Her son is supposed to have been a gang member. He's the one who was the perpetrator, who's caused her the travails she's in now. Right? They said a couple of years ago he was shot on a bus, right, for doing a gang member sign that he said he belonged to a gang, and he was shot in the chest. He survived, and now it's unfortunate she was driving the car when he shot into a crowd. Now the purpose of my doing this video is to say, look, black officials or black cops, right, who commit misconduct, who abuse their authority, they don't commit misconduct. They don't prey on members of the white community or the Asian community. You find they invariably prey on members of the black community. So the black community, black Americans, black Nigerians, let me focus on black Nigerians because, I get blowback and backlash for talking about black Americans, even though I'm black, right, and I'm an American. Um, it's many times we tend to want to protect, members of our community because we're concerned about being stereotyped and having a negative image, right? But something we have to understand is when there's a black cop committing misconduct, you bet 100%, 99.9% of the time, his victims, right? If he's abusing his authority, his victims are not white people, but members of the black community, right? Members of minority communities, not white, not the majority uh, community, which is protected by the legal framework, right? Which whites created, right? So you bet if they were to bring there are more revelations, I wouldn't be surprised if the crowd that the deputy police commissioner who's just been fired, if the crowd her son fired into was a crowd of black people or black of minorities and not white people. I wouldn't be surprised, right? So, and you see it amongst black police officers. Like in my case, I suffered misconduct amongst black officials. The judge who approved a fabricated emergency evaluation petition for someone with no history of mental illness, with no mental illness, an adult, was a black judge, Judge B.B. Berry. She did it for a professor in her alma mater, Howard University, Jide Wari, a black man, right? Jide Wari had told me he volunteers or works for the Montgomery County Police Department. He claims he's the chairman of their prison Christian ministries. That's what he had said to me. It's on recording, right? Montgomery County Police have said he's crazy, but there are many crazy things that he said. They said he's delusional, that they don't know him, right? So, but there are many things, Montgomery County police officers, their officials have lied consistently, right? Including DeMarcus Coleman, right? Montgomery County police officer came into my home dressed like he was maintenance without an arrest warrant around the time they were orchestrating, manufacturing the swatting, how they were going to rope me in and frame me, assault me, and remove me from my apartment where I had a legal right to be in. So I would find him in the hospital, after I'd been assaulted on May 17th. That's the police officer dressed like he's maintenance, coming into my home without an arrest or a search warrant, violating my privacy, right? So you see, like I said, it's, and of course, DeMarcus Coleman, who filed the perjured arrest warrant, ex post facto arrest warrant. That means after the event, after I'd been already taken into court custody, assaulted, and removed from my home, right? He files a fabricated, perjured arrest warrant, and he admitted in court that it was a lie. And he claimed that it's not perjury because he claimed he didn't take an oath when he obtained that arrest warrant, right? So another lie. So again, it's something we need to be aware of, that when we see misconduct amongst government officials, whether they're black, they're Nigerian Americans, report it, because the people they're preying on, right, their victims are not white people, right? They're not the majority culture. They're not the protected. They're not the classes that have the wealth, right? The socioeconomic status. It's black people. It's minorities that they're victimizing. Just like in the case of the unfortunate deputy commissioner of police, she's been excoriated, she's been humiliated. She worked hard to get her position, and now, they're just going to, go nuclear, go, on her. It's very unfortunate, and all sorts of accusations. But when you work hard to get your position of authority as a minority, as a black person, you must maintain your integrity and the integrity of the system, and know who you also represent, that you're there to also protect the vulnerable, not prey on them. So for black people who have in positions of authority, who prey on their own kind, on black people, well, it's well deserved, right? They deserve to be. They deserve the full brunt of the law. They deserve justice. God fights for the poor, those who can't fight for themselves. God is the judge of the whole universe. He's sovereign, and God will vindicate and fight for them. My name is Olorotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.